Hi, oral communication class. I am excited to come to you as we preview session 4 that's coming up. And I wanted to walk you through some specific comments related to the informative speeches to help us prepare for the upcoming session 4 and session 5 speeches. First, I want to say you're all doing a great job. I'm really enjoying your speeches. It is challenging to videotape yourself and watch yourself. I think it is almost easier to do this in a classroom where you don't ever have to see how you did. You just get feedback from your peers. It's much harder to sort of watch yourself on tape. So I just want to encourage you. You're doing a great job and keep up the good work. In preparation for upcoming speeches, I have 3 specific areas of comment that I'd like to provide in the hopes of helping us all learn together and helping us start on the same page for session 4 and then moving into session 5. So the first thing I want to talk about is when you begin your speech. So most of us this session began our speech by introducing ourselves and then providing maybe a little background information. And I really just want to remind you that this is no longer necessary. We've all met each other. We had the getting to know you speech, and then we had the impromptu speech. And we are your audience. And so remember from the session 1 conversations that we had, it's very important when you're speaking to remember your audience and your purpose. So we are your audience. We already know you. And it's important to just jump right in with that attention getter that you've added to your outline. Many of you had great questions or statistics or an exciting quote to begin your speech. And so I want to encourage you to just go ahead and start with that. Jump right into your speech. That will help you get started and get the feeling for what it feels like to actually present a speech in a formal way as you would in a classroom or in a different type of setting. So that's my first piece of encouragement, is just go ahead and jump right into your speech. Second, I want to talk to you about outlines and organization. Most of you did great research and you had awesome information for your informative speeches. However, some of that information wasn't communicated as effectively as it could be because there wasn't clear organization either in your outline or the way that you presented the information, or perhaps in some cases both. Having been speaking for a long time, I know that sometimes there's a tendency to just find good information and then think, I'll begin presenting it and sharing my ideas, and the ideas will flow and I'll fill the time and it'll be great. And sometimes that does work. For some occasions, that does work. However, for the type of formal speeches you're doing for this class, it's absolutely essential that your ideas are clearly organized and that you provide verbal cues for your audience to understand what you're presenting. It's very important for you to gather that research and that information and then categorize it. Think about your top 2 or 3 key points and then put that research under those points. It's really helpful if you can preview your ideas. For example, if I were going to give an informative speech on fashion, I might preview my points by saying, first, we're going to talk about fashion at the turn of the 20th century. Second, I'm going to talk to you about the fashions of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And finally, we're going to talk about fashion of today and how today's fashions were influenced by both of those time periods. Then as I move through my speech, I would say, first, let's talk about fashion from the turn of the 20th century. And then I would give you my examples. Then I would very clearly say, second, now we're going to talk about fashion of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Then I would present that information. Then I would say, our last category is talking about fashion of today. How is fashion of today influenced by fashion at the turn of the century and by fashion of the 60s, 70s, and 80s? This is just one example that I'm providing. Of course, I don't really know anything about fashion. It's just one example I'm giving. I encourage students sometimes to think about it like they would think about a written paper. If you have to read something and it's a block of text from the top to the bottom without any paragraph indentation, think about how that makes you feel. I know for me, when I see something like that, I sometimes feel a little bit overwhelmed. I might prejudge it and be bored before I even start reading it because I feel like it's just going to be a lot of information without any break or pause and without any change of topic. Well, when we give an oral presentation or a speech, sometimes our audience members can begin to feel that way if we never give them indication that we've switched topic. if we never indicate to them that we're moving through the speech or we're getting closer to the conclusion. It also is a real struggle for audience members to remember what we're talking about if we don't cue them in to the main points that we're providing for them. So sometimes it may feel like you're being a little bit of an announcer or making an announcement to indicate you're switching of point. But truthfully, it makes for a much clearer presentation when you mark those changes of topic for your audience. If you think about the best sermons you hear, that is what those preachers and speakers do. They'll say, I have 4 examples, 4 applications from this passage. I know just yesterday, the pastor who spoke at our church talked about 4 key applications from this passage in Luke 1 that he wanted us to remember. And I can still remember all 4 because he said the first application is, and then he walked us through that. And so it helps your audience members remember what you're talking about. It keeps them engaged, and it provides a very clear organization for your speech when you preview your points, when you use those oral verbal cues to mark your speech and to walk your audience members through, and it makes it a much more effective speech that your audience members will remember long after it's over. The third thing I want to talk to you about is using notes and making eye contact. I know there's a temptation because many of our cameras are also situated near a computer to sort of read our notes off of a computer screen. And I really want to just encourage you to go ahead and print off your notes and refer to your notes as you would if you were speaking in front of a classroom. As much as possible, we want our speeches to be similar to how they would be if we were in a classroom together. So you wouldn't have a computer screen to read, you would be reading off of your notes. And again, even the world's best speakers do this. True, presidents and presidential candidates use a teleprompter, but they often also have printed notes. Newscasters read a teleprompter, but they also have printed notes often. And it's most appropriate to reference your notes as you're presenting and to look down and remember what you're going to say and then look back at your audience. This is most similar to how it would be in an actual speech situation. So as much as you can, try not to read off of a computer screen and try to engage with your audience using printed out notes. That'll be a little bit more similar to how it would be in a regular speech class. So finally, the last thing I want to talk about is demonstration speeches. We are in session 4 and it's demonstration speech week, which is truthfully one of my favorites. I always love to see what students present and getting to learn new skills from all of you. And I hope that you're thinking through what you might want to present to us, what you might want to demonstrate for us. I just want to remind you that it's important to tape your speech start to finish, again, as you would if you were presenting it to a classroom. So think about how they present a recipe on a television program like Michael and Kelly or Kelly and Michael. They have all the steps of the recipe prepared in advance, and then they're able to quickly walk the audience through how to prepare that recipe without having to stop the camera or do a commercial break. So that's what you need to do as well. If your presentation has multiple parts, make sure you have all the parts ready to go so that you can show us the different steps. And for the outline for the demonstration speech, it's just important to think about the steps in the order of the process. Those really become your main points. And again, just as I mentioned for the informative speech, it's very helpful to preview those steps. If I were going to show you how to make a quilt, first I might talk about gathering your materials, then I would talk about measuring and cutting, and then I would talk about putting the pieces together. So the same is true for sort of any demonstration you give. You want it to be as organized as possible. But it's really a lot of fun. If you have questions about it, let me know. But I look forward to the demonstration speeches, and I just want to say keep up the good work. And I look forward to the rest of the work we're going to do together. Take care and have a good week.